Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to introduce to you Johnathan Davis, who is the co-founder and chief content officer of IBT Media. IBT is a global digital news organization with around 90 million monthly readers, based on a number of products, IBT, International Business Times, but other products as well, like Medical Daily, Fashion Times. But the reason why we're having our chat is because in 2013, IBT bought Newsweek. Now, you guys will know better than anybody else as to the rather checkered history that Newsweek had in the last few years. After being published for 80 years by Washington Post, an iconic brand, but increasingly heavily loss-making, Washington Post sold it in 2010. Later in the year, it was merged with the Daily Beast. 2012 went digital only when the print edition was closed, and then 2013, Johnathan and his co-founder bought Newsweek, and 7 months after buying it, relaunched the print edition at a higher price and a very different looking product. So it's a fascinating, rather wild sort of flip-flop story, print, digital, back to print again, which I want to talk to you about, Johnathan, and your thinking behind it all. But why don't we kick off about you, because you are not a traditional publisher, and I think you're an engineer by training, aren't you?
Right. So first off, thank you for having me, and thank you for all of you to come and attend. My adventure into the media industry has been quite an odyssey for myself. I started out as an electrical engineer. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and I grew up around computers and computer technology, and this was really where my life was headed. So I started to work at a semiconductor company, and we were building chips and things, but this wasn't really my passion. My passion was all the development that was happening around us on the internet. So there was a software revolution that was happening, and so I was doing my work, looking at this amazing revolution happening. And around 2005, 2006, I met who's now my business co-founder, Etienne Uzac. Etienne, he came from London. He studied economics, and he was seeing, I think, a converging world, partially brought on by the advent of the internet. So markets were getting closer. We saw the rise of, the BRICS and other emerging markets, but we didn't really see any media that was serving this with a globally native type of perspective. Right? So this was what he sold me on, and yeah, this was exciting for me, but what was more exciting was that we were going to do this on the internet, and that's how we started. So he came with kind of this vision for how the world was changing, and I was excited to do this in a way that can scale and can impact many lives across the internet. And so we started IBT Media in 2006, and it's just been growing since then.
Do you think not having a publishing background actually helped, was an advantage to you in setting the IBT business up?
Yeah, so again, I think with a background in technology, I think this emanates through the culture of our company. We're not afraid of technology. I think we use it in creative ways to help us spit out the product. Also, I think not having this background gives us a different perspective on some of the challenges. And allows us to bring some fresh thinking, to some of the things that we're facing. Okay,
so fast forward to 2013, what possessed you to buy Newsweek?
Right, so this actually started out through a real estate deal. So
of course, yes.
That's where all good deals start. In 2011, IBT Media was expanding rapidly, and we had a small office in Manhattan, but we were running out of space, essentially. It just so happens that Newsweek got bought by IAC at the same time. Right? So we were looking for space around Manhattan very frantically. There was no more room. There's no place to sit. At the same time, Newsweek had to move out of their office. Right? So we connected with them, and this must be, I think, like the fastest real estate deal in the history of Manhattan. We found them, negotiated, they moved out, and we moved in 2 weeks. Right? So this is a whirlwind of a move. And from that time, we were in close contact with their executives. And we kind of joked internally. We said, well, now that we have their office, we might as well get the brand. And we would joke with them every once in a while, but in 2013, then they called us. And we really had to evaluate what we saw in Newsweek and the opportunity, and we're really happy with, I think, the prospect.
Okay, so once you got it, you started to change it pretty quickly. So can we sort of talk a bit about that content aspect as to how you changed it and why you did?
Sure. Well, the change for us was simple. I think if we look at the change, considering Newsweek historically, there's been a departure. Newsweek historically has been a news digest, right? So you would get it every week, you'd look back on the week and kind of get a good, deep understanding of what happened, essentially. But now in the age of the internet, then everyone already knows everything happening all the time. And so for us, we had to build a new team and a new content philosophy for Newsweek, but still we wanted to uphold, I think, the facets of what made Newsweek great in the first place, right? And this is great storytelling, great journalism, great writing. And when you look at Newsweek now, this really reflects both in the print publication and also on the website. So it's really evolved into a platform for rich storytelling, great opinion and analysis, as opposed to simply just a digest.
Okay. So I can understand the strategy. There must have been real practical problems because you were a digital-only company. Did you have to import then, I was going to say new skills, old skills, that had been lost in the recent past of Newsweek?
Well, I think the great thing was, when we had acquired Newsweek, then there wasn't much left, right? So we'd taken over the brand. There's a few people that we brought, but really we had to build the team from the ground up. And kind of a funny story was that once we finished signing the papers from the previous owner, which was IAC, we had about 2.5 weeks to build the team, to source the stories, and to get the next magazine out. And we got a tremendous team, and they were able to do a great job. Okay.
When did the thought of relaunching the print edition occur to you or become part of your strategy? Did you buy Newsweek with the intention of resurrecting print, or was it something that dawned on you as being a good idea once you had Newsweek?
Yes, that's a good question. When we looked at Newsweek initially, then there was a few facets that really attracted us, right? And I think Newsweek, in its essence, really matches the DNA of IBT Media. So at that time, we know that the previous owner had turned this into strictly digital. And we know that there was tremendous brand equity still inside of Newsweek. And we bought this wanting to uphold that and wanting to bring, I think, our digital know-how and experience to the brand. And we saw that there was a tremendous opportunity there. But several months into this, we started to get a lot of correspondence from previous subscribers, actually. So people were contacting us, even we're getting handwritten letters, basically asking, where's the magazine? How can I get this magazine again? And after seeing that and understanding that there was some demand there, then we started to look into the print industry. And I think we had a tremendous opportunity, because when we studied the industry, we saw, at least in America, there was this preoccupation with the rate base, right? So publishers were really concerned about rate base, and what this meant was that the publishing industry was focused on the advertisers. Now, because we had the brand with amazing content coming out, great journalism already, we felt that we could now re-enter the print market with a print package that really matched the great journalism that we were doing, but also change the model such that we could serve consumers directly instead of serving only advertisers. Right? So we went with an approach that really went after subscribers and newsstand sales, and we wanted to serve the people.
Okay, so actually there are various elements of the business model that I'd like to dig into in a bit more detail. You've touched on one there, which was the balance between content and advertising. So you made a very clear decision to try and reduce the dependence on advertising because, why? Because it's volatile, it's dangerous.
Well, I think if we focus strictly on advertisers, then we didn't want to get into this similar situation where we're only serving rate base. So we wanted to go double down into great content, and we wanted to make a product that people themselves would want to buy, right? Something that you would go to the newsstand. If you look at the graphics that we're doing in the magazine, it's really amazing covers week to week. If you look at the actual quality of the magazine, we're using very heavy paper, perfectly bound, spine, great photography. So our focus was really on the consumers. And we felt that as we did that, and if we succeeded in that, then advertising would naturally come.
Okay. I'm intrigued, sort of digging down a bit more detail. You mentioned Newsstand. Where does retail fit into the overall consumer strategy? Is that a shop window that then feeds into subscriptions? What's the role of retail in your plan?
Yeah, retail is important for us. I think, part of the DNA of us being a digital company is that we're always looking at the data. We're always looking at the numbers, and we want to make sure that there's good ROI on everything that we do. So we're doing Newsstand, but we're making sure that it's optimal such that Newsstand can be profitable, right? Of course, it serves as a great marketing tool.
Right.
We get the name out, we're able to get the covers out, but we want to make sure that we're not losing money there either.
Right.
So Newsstand plays a good role in this. When we look at, actually Newsweek, when we took it over, it was roughly around, zero revenue, roughly. But now, that's grown into, essentially an 8-figure type of number. And circulation is an important part of that. And advertising is becoming increasingly more important. And of course, there's licensing, right? So these 3 models are coming into play now, where before there was only really licensing that was happening.
Right, okay. I'd like to sort of, again, dig into a bit more detail about this balance between print and digital, particularly in terms of your subscription pricing, because if you look at someone like The Economist, who are very clearly channel agnostic, so print only, digital only, cost the same in terms of a subscription price, and then the bundle, print and digital, is about a 40% premium. Now, your pricing is very different. Your digital only stream is a lot cheaper than print only. What's the thinking behind that structure?
Well, right now we're at this unique point in time for Newsweek as a brand where we're reintroducing this back into the market. There's a real cost associated with the print magazine, and that's reflected in the newsstand price, right? So this is a little bit higher than what Newsweek used to be, but we're seeing that consumers who want it are willing to pay for it. Now, on the digital side, we wanted to reintroduce this softly into the market, cross-market it with the other titles that we have in our portfolio, and allow this to grow over time. Where we find parity is somewhere in the future, and when that's going to happen, we're still evaluating. Okay,
but that is a long-term aim for it to be completely channel.
It's something that we're evaluating. It could be that digital is always less, because the cost associated with print is tangible. Right, so we're evaluating this on a daily basis.
Okay, and do you see print gradually declining or ever disappearing? Do you think you will return to being a digital-only product ever?
Well, I think what's great about the consumer-focused business model is that so long as there's demands, we're going to continue to print. Right, so we're gaining subscribers, regardless of how the economies work out. People that want it are gonna pay for it, right? So for us as a company, I can't speak for the whole industry, but for Newsweek in itself, we're always gonna print so long as there's subscribers, whether that's one subscriber or whether it's hundreds of thousands or millions that we're projecting. It's gonna be something that's part of our strategy. Now, the core essence behind all of this, of course, is great content, right? And that's what's channel agnostic. So whether this is in your app or on our website, in the magazine, you're going to get this great kind of deep dive into current affairs.
Okay. You mentioned earlier on another thread to this, which is enterprises. Can you give a bit more detail as to what that actually involves? Because there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days about live events, as an example. What do you see as because you're talking about extending the Newsweek brand?
Yeah, so that's one of the great things about that we discovered about Newsweek is that there's still tremendous brand equity. I mean, it's one of the few magazines that's just instantly globally recognizable, and there's a lot of plays that we can do on top of that. One, of course, is licensing. So Newsweek is something that speaks to the world, and there's different dynamics in different markets, and we're looking for the right type of licensing partners to let Newsweek come and reach that market. So we have several licensing partners now. We're looking and speaking to several more, and we see licensing growing to becoming a larger part of the pie for us as a company. Also, when we think about the brands, there's certain, I think, connotations that the brand brings because of the smart content. And we're seeing a lot of different plays to let the brand exist outside of just the printed word. So, just last week we had an event at NYU kind of focused on entrepreneurialism. It sold out within 15 minutes. And we brought on board, great CEOs to talk about their experience. And I think this is where we can see the brand moving forward, something that represents, this type of something that we can extract this type of different models from. Okay. And one last thing is, when we look globally, then Newsweek, some people I've talked to, then Newsweek was something actually that their teachers would give them, a long time ago, right, as part of their prescribed reading. It was a way a lot of people learned English, actually. So we're in talks now about expanding the brand into like English schools and things like this. So this is a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity.
I mean, presumably also it's a great challenge as well, because the local conditions, the local business model must vary depending how digital a particular market is, and the dependence on advertising revenue versus content revenue must change region by region. How do you manage that?
Well, that's the great part about having great licensing partners. So we're really stewards of the brands and the content, the voice and tone, and we're looking for great partners to really bring this to local market, right? And we can partner with them not only with the content, but I think the best practices that we've learned on the digital side also. And they are going to know their market better than we will. So we want to find that partner that can make this make sense in those local markets. And it's been a healthy and fruitful relationship.
Right. Okay. Moving on then from the business model, and another sort of back-end issue, but another theme that's run through very much the last couple of days is organization and culture and skills. Because you've had a rather unique experience with digital-only, reintroducing print, and a whole mix of skills. Can you talk through some of the challenges you already touched on about sort of, and I think hiring in a new editor for
Sure.
starters, but what else lies behind that in terms of the skills and the organization?
Well, I think also we need to look at this broadly. So for us, it wasn't a culture change for us because we built the team from the ground up, right? But IBT Media is a digital-first company, and this really emanates inside of Newsweek as well. So even though we have a print magazine, the newsroom is set up such that they're also digital-first. And the digital aspect of what we're doing is really the heartbeat of the magazine. So from digital, we're able to quickly understand our audience and kind of take the temperature on what people care about, and translate that now into the magazine to make the deeper dives, right? At the same time, the magazine sets the benchmark for the quality of journalism that we're doing on the website. So it's a good synergy between both of these. But I wouldn't say that we have separate teams. It's very integrated.
Okay, so digital first means one thing you've already touched on, which is live, real time, being fast and
Right.
reacting to what the consumer is doing. And can you tell us a bit more? You said you're very data driven as to the kind of data that you use to change the product.
Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of digital publishers have this experience now. We were kind of early by necessity, building and exploring some of these tools to really understand our audience. These days, people use things like Chartbeat, and of course there's Omniture and these type of tools to really give you like real-time insight. But some of these tools we built in-house. And so the Newsweek team, they're using this data to understand what the pulse is, broadly speaking, right? And that allows us to then put out a relevant magazine on a week-by-week basis.
Okay. Something else that are clearly talking to digital pure play companies when they come in and look at a traditional publisher is what they regard as how much fat there is in a traditional publisher. And I think for many people, digital only or digital pure play means doing more things with fewer people.
Right. Yeah, you know, we were really surprised of the type of spending that Newsweek used to do, you know. One example is, you know, we had to inherit a lot of these contracts, you know, as part of the acquisition. And one of these contracts was for printing services. And I don't mean printing the magazine, I just mean printers around the office. And this was like a 6-figure type of contract just to get printers, right? And I think that's a major departure, you know, from the culture that we built in IBT Media. It's a relatively new company. We're really close to the metal, you know, so to speak, as to how the product is performing and what the return is. And that culture now exists inside of Newsweek as well. So, you know, there's no 6-figure printing contracts, but, you know, we just buy Dells. And things work out a lot more efficiently this way.
Okay. But is it all a one-way flow? Is it of you introducing digital-first disciplines into a legacy company? Or is there flow the other way? Are there things that you've learned as an organization, as IBT, from the Newsweek experience?
The Newsweek is a world-class brand putting out world-class content. You know, and we're really thankful to have the team that we have on the content side. We brought on board Jim and Poco, who's the editor, and he brought like an amazing team, you know, together. And so there's some give and take there. You know, we're learning together about what works, what's the best practices for digital, and at the same time, he's allowing the company to understand the best practices for storytelling and for journalistic rigor. So it's a great relationship.
Okay. And is it all working? I think I know the answer to this, but or how far down the process? Because it sounds as though you're still learning a lot and tweaking things as you go along.
Yeah. I mean, it's working so far, thankfully, and you know, we see a lot more, you know, headroom for Newsweek. It's really just getting started. So, you know, we're building greater, you know, bigger teams on the business side. We really want to introduce this back into the market in a very strong way. You know, now I think it's been very editorial focused. So we focus first on putting out a great product, but now we're going to start tying in the other things that we spoke about. So events, licensing, you know, having great advertising partners, and you know, the whole gamut of what a magazine would do. But first, we wanted to make sure that core was there, and you know, we're happy to say that it's been established.
Okay. Final question. It sounds as though there have been a few surprises along the way and perhaps a few skeletons falling out of cupboards as you were going along. Looking back on it all, would you do it again?
Yeah, definitely. We'd do it again. And I think Newsweek really fits, you know, what we want to do as a company, right? We want to find the truth and promulgate it everywhere. And Newsweek has an 80-year legacy doing this. With great storytelling. So it's a great fit, it's a great match, and we do it definitely again. Okay, and as a subsidiary question, would you do it in the same way? Or, because it sounds as though, well, it started out as a real estate deal and turned into something a bit bigger. Yeah, if you look at the arc of the Newsweek story, then all the stars had to align, right? So if we look at what the previous publishers have done with it, it really prepared it, essentially, for us. If you look at their transition into digital, it allowed us to acquire it without too much overhead, and also to build the team from the ground up. You know, so I wouldn't do it differently either. And right. I think everything kind of worked out, and we're very thankful for that. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Johnathan. Great, really interesting. Okay.